Have you seen the movie Memento?
No.
Memento is this movie where like the hero has short-term memory loss.
Mm-hmm.
So the best way to think about technology and AI today is to actually have the short-term memory loss. And like every 6 months, just forget what had happened just 6 months before.
Your own new company, which is actually run by agents, the AI agents. How has that happened over time? Can you unpack that journey for us?
AI research lab, applied AI research lab, where the conviction is that agents are going to do a lot of the research, and that's how I'm thinking about it.
Hi everyone, I am so excited to talk to you all for the first time in my own podcast. Frankly, there are so many of you I can see right now who are smiling because you gave me this particular suggestion long back. And finally seeing it come together, I feel really excited as well as very proud that I have so many of you around who helped me actually come to this particular place where I could come and share my own learnings through the years around leadership. And it's a great privilege to be part of this particular leadership journey, not just by myself, but also with all the leaders and so many of you in the journey. Every time I have an interaction with a leader, I've always understood a new definition to leadership because everyone's perspective is so different. And this particular name, we actually spent some time thinking about what we should call it, and then finally landed on no straight lines because everyone's leadership trajectory is different. And everyone has had their own unique challenges, own unique milestones that they have gone through and peaked their leadership, but still they're at it. That sense of determination, resilience, and also giving back. I feel that is something very unique when I actually think of leaders around me and my career and life journey so far. So, this is an attempt to really unpack what really goes behind the scenes in creating that leadership approach, which is full of conviction. It's also full of failures, successes, and then continuous learning and reimagination. And with that intent, I want to start this podcast to really kind of try to connect all the dots together of how people actually start as individual contributors, managers, and eventually get into becoming a leader. And something that I've always connected with is you are actually a leader not just by becoming who you are, by becoming who you are in the eyes of others. And that to me is true leadership. So, with that intent, let's start this conversation. And I look forward to your comments, your inputs, your feedback, your questions around this particular podcast series. And we will actually meet with a lot of leaders and we'll understand from them what their journey has been. And today, it's a great privilege for me to start this particular podcast series with someone who I have seen for almost like a decade plus, and we have had shared journeys of each other in a company that we were together and then outside. And I feel that this connection of being together and seeing each other's journey is actually something very, very amazing to actually cherish over a period of time. And so let me introduce our first podcast guest for this particular series with Rajan, who is now a founder of Kalmantic AI. And I don't know how many years it has been that we last met. Whenever we meet together, it's the same fresh breath of energy and reimagination that we always start our conversations with. And so, Rajan, thank you for coming here and being part of this particular podcast and starting this particular podcast, together with me. And I want to go back to being together, maybe at our Intuit days. And there is something that you had written on the board that is still stuck in my head, which is around where autonomy meets passion. And that was something so deep for me to actually understand, and in the context of innovation, right? You have led innovation in companies, you have been investor in different companies, you have been a mentor to so many startups, and now your own new company, which is actually run by agents, the AI agents. How has that happened over time? Can you unpack that journey for us? And how has that shaped your leadership style?
So, Anshuman, I will definitely get into that, but I'm so privileged to be back having this conversation with you. And I also want to say congratulations. I really absolutely love the name. And I think, you've caught the spirit of leadership in terms of framing this as is like there is no straight lines. So, congratulations on that again. And so happy to actually
Thank
have this
you.
conversation with you. So, yeah, we worked together at Intuit.
Yeah.
And I played initially the role of innovation leader, then moved on to being like a product manager. I guess we all learn from the best in the environments that we learn from. So I would actually say that that particular quote was something that I borrowed from others, and it was from Brad,
Mm-hmm.
who's the CEO of the company. And Intuit had this fantastic thought process, which is where I moved into in terms of saying that we need to have this unstructured time where engineers can feel that they have the time and ability to think about ideas, come up with small experiments, and then see if this can turn into a business and impacting customers' lives. So that is a great line. I love the line. I have repeated ad nauseum. However, like I said, I was borrowed from great leaders that we learned from. So it's that's how you need to think about innovation, which is how do you think about being open to experimenting with things, but then work on things that you're really passionate about. Talking a little bit about my journey, I started out as an engineer from IIIT Hyderabad, and then I worked at a company called Sapient. Again, a great place to learn about leadership, learn about program management, things like that. At this point in time, you correctly identified, I founded a AI research lab, applied AI research lab, where I'm where the conviction is that agents are going to do a lot of the research, and that's how I'm thinking about it. I'm also a GP at a pre-seed accelerator fund called Upekha. It's about 8 years old. Have invested in about close to 180 companies at the pre-seed stage, where we work with founders that are starting from India but building global businesses. But prior to that, spent some time in doing cross-border M&A, and then worked at Intuit for over 7 years, and did 2 startups in between. Yeah. And I've worked with startups while I was doing startup, but also while I was working at Intuit, I was part of think tanks and industry association programs and working with startups, and that's what led me to the startup journey at Intuit. Outside of Intuit, my last 8 years of journey has all been some connection or relationship with startup. Why I started Kalmantic is that the first startup that I did was as a computer vision startup. This was during the dinosaur era of AI. And at that particular point in time, all the companies met with certain fate. We thought AI has arrived, but then, it turned out to be like a false notion. And then therefore, everybody just looked at research and said, okay, this is not translating into a real business outcome. But when ChatGPT happened, and every 6 months since ChatGPT, there is some magical wonder that is happening in the industry because of the changes that are happening in AI. And I felt I need to go back to the roots. And my roots were in researching and building and things like that. So this is something that I've incubated, and that is where I'm spending a lot of my time.
So what a fantastic journey, Rajan. I mean, when I think of our days together at Intuit and innovation, the CDI D4D was something that we kind of looked at always when we're thinking of customer, right? It's customer obsession being core of whatever we do. And even today, I feel like whenever I think of a problem, I think of that particular approach of really trying to solve for a big unmet customer problem or a pain point, right? And in your journey, right, now that you have navigated through so many different roles, being with a company and then going outside, starting on your own, being an advisor, now kind of leading a team, how has that shift been? Has there any shift been in how you used to think of innovation and how you used to apply it at that time? And now, how do you look at innovation now versus
so
the
when
past?
I was doing my startup, it was very research and tech and engineering focus, and then the focus was on making sure that that tech part of it is working, right? And then that was the era of where AI was not ready for anybody, and then the takeaway I had from that. It's like, you need to talk to customers, you need to understand the problem. We went through multiple pivot, and then the entire Intuit experience was like, with this thing drilled in the mind that, innovation actually starts from customer. It doesn't start from the idea. You don't say, hey, idea moves forward.
Yeah.
If you understand the customer, you work backwards from the customer, and then, the iteration that you do, then, you get to innovation really fast. Which is why, like, at Intuit, like, no engineer was allowed to touch code before you have spoken to any customer. And then we would to do this follow me homes, and then make sure that, we are understanding the customer deeper than they know themselves. This, I think, is fantastic. Even when I'm working at Upeka, and then, I'm having conversations with founders, I'm like, look, you're going to figure out how you build the technology, but have you had the customer conversation? So we would push people and then say, have at least 30 customer conversation, 15 competitor conversation, and then another 20 to 30 stakeholder conversation. But in the last 2 or 3 years, my view has changed, and it has become completely 180 degree of that.
Okay.
And that may actually shock a lot of people. The reason for that is that, like, when big shifts happen, customers don't know what they want, and they can't even imagine what is it that is possible. And therefore, like, for me, the last 18 months, I'm saying something else. I'm like, don't go to the customer and then say, hey, tell me what you want, or show me your natural behavior and tell me what is it something that you can do. I'm saying that, go to customers and show and tell. Because, like, what AI is bringing is that it is bringing magical experiences.
Absolutely.
And when you go and tell them and show them the magical experiences, then they can say, hey, I want this or I don't want this. So have you ever seen a magician come and say, hey, tell me what magic can I perform for you?
Yeah.
It will look odd, right?
Correct.
So when you actually go through these technology shifts where there are phases of magic, I don't think, you can be very customer-led. When things settle down, right? Like when you were like literally inventing the computer, nobody could go and say that Ada Lovelace did not say, hey, what do you want?
Yeah.
Right? Or even when there were 6 supercomputers in the world, mainframe computers in the world, they thought like that's the maximum demand or capacity that is going to be. But when things settle down, and then you come up with microcomputer, and then you say, now tell me, do you need accounting software, or you need like Excel sheet for you? Then you can understand what the customer wants and then actually make the changes. So in the early phases of like any new technology is coming, where it is like going through the magic phase of the evolution, I don't think customer conversations work. So my input now to people is if you go and talk to a customer and then say, hey, what do you want? They'll be like, what do you have? And people take that as a wrong input from the customer, and then they keep badgering them back again. I actually suggest that, go and show and tell them, saying, hey, here is magical possibility.
Yeah.
Does this work for you? Does that work for you? Or does this work for you? And then, then you figure out what you want to double down. So my innovation view on this, when there is like a platform shift that is happening, this is not very customer driven.
Yeah.
It has to be technology driven to enable a magical experience, showcase that magical experience, and then say, okay, now you tell me. Because if imagine like Sam Altman went and said, what do you want? Right? He would have not been able to sort of arrive at ChatGPT. And the way the ChatGPT experience happened is that first transformers were invented, then they turned it into an API program called GPT-1 and GPT-2. And then when somebody came and layered a chat interface on top of it and made it available to people, they were like mind blown, saying that, oh, this intelligence is so powerful. It is in a natural interface. And then it took off, right? A million users in a very short span of time. And I think that is what is happening practically with every AI change. And I have a framework for that every model changes is now enabling what I call as a dam break moment. ChatGPT was a dam breaking moment. Voice agents are dam breaking moment. Anshuman, you were telling me the other day that, you looked at Wispr Flow and you said, wow, what an experience.
Totally.
Right? And you're like, look, I don't mind paying $3,000 for this, because, the amount of productivity enhancement that it is making for me is almost like a magical wand.
Yeah.
Right? And this was not imaginable about like 18 months ago.
Absolutely.
Right? So therefore, I think, we have to actually change with times. Right? There is context and time for CDI. I think, in Intuit language, we will call like very TDI driven, very technology driven innovation, in terms of saying, hey, what can the technology express? Understand that, and then say, okay, what are the business models around it, and how do we make sure that customers are going to get delighted? You are truly delighted by Wispr Flow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm using it even now. Like any email that I need to actually write, I just open that particular app, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And the unique part of it is it actually waits for you to finish whatever you're speaking, and then connects it back to the whole conversation. So you see it all together versus like you're seeing it right and then you're like, okay, no, maybe I should change something here. So it's also like understanding how you actually connect, how you speak with people, and then kind of learns.
And we don't have to have that customer conversation, say, hey, what is the ROI on this? And is it actually saving you 3 hours? You just feel it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think in the in the innovation context, I remember the aha moment, right?
Aha moments.
I think it's just like bringing forward the aha moment, the moment you kind of engage with customers, right? That wow them with show them what it can do for
and
you.
This unlock happened 18
Yeah.
months ago
Yeah.
because like something had happened in voice models, right? And there's a threshold that had crossed. See, 20 years ago, people were trying it. There were companies that were built. In fact, I think, Bill Campbell himself built a company. It's like working on a technology like this. I think if I remember it right, good technology or something like that. But at that time, tech was not ready.
Yeah.
Something had happened in the last 18 months where the tech is ready and great founders come and layer a beautiful product experience on top of it. And then, boom, we have great innovation. So the approach for this was not CDI. And that is the shift that I have made in the last 18 months in terms of saying that, okay, when new technology comes, what magic does it enable? Right? And of course, customers will have to vote with their wallet like how you did.
Absolutely.
But then, it starts with magical experience.
Yeah. Wow. And you actually talked about something that's very interesting, right? The 18 months back versus now. Whenever I have actually interacted with leaders or my own interaction with technology, I feel that something fundamentally has shifted. Even in AI, I think it started with like there are endless possibilities, right? You can actually do anything that you can imagine, and then you started kind of seeing it with the Chat GPT interactions, and then to a point where people are like, okay, we understand the possibilities, but what can really be done? Right. So kind of looking at ROI versus, okay, all this creativity and imagination is great, but tell us performance, right? So how have you kind of looked at, especially when you think of AI, what was the moment of time in the last 18, 20 months when you felt like, wow, AI can really reimagine the way we do things? And has that shifted now when you think of performance, etc.?
So I've studied AI undergrad and did startup in AI. And I would say that, I've worked with and met a lot of people who have been like working in AI since the 70s, 80s and things like that. But then the thing about AI has been that it has always gone through multiple winters. There are at least 6 or 7 AI winters that you can count if you're starting from Marvin Minsky in 1950. AI has gone through many, many winters. Even in 2022, like when ChatGPT was coming up, it felt like the question was like, is this going to be like, another winter where there is like overfunding that is happening? But what I would say is that, like as in tech shifts, I always like to call this a saying that you have to know how to read weak signals. Right? So the weak signal for ChatGPT was very clear because, in few months and few weeks, like few days, millions of users were adopting and then they were going gaga over it. Right? And when users adopt, then you have to actually go and look at it. Right? And they were adopting in a way that it was completely unprecedented. And ChatGPT was this historic product where it got to million users in an unprecedented way, right?
Yeah.
So you had to actually pay attention to that. But then, the thing I have found useful in the last 18 months is, have you seen the movie Memento?
No.
Memento is this movie where the hero has short-term memory loss. So the best way to think about technology and AI today is to actually have that short-term memory loss. And like every 6 months, just forget what had happened 6 months before.
Right.
I mean, I'm like, it's sounding like a joke, but this is a framing I heard from Satya, and I've been using this a lot. See, the tech industry was actually driven by what is called as Moore's law. It's like every 18 months, the capacity doubles. So that actually sustains the hardware, the software, and the application that we are building on top of it. Scaling law, I know the purists are going to kill me for this, but I'm going to use this version of scaling law. Every 6 months, the cost of AI is coming down by 1/10, and the ability of intelligence is going up by 30%, which means that previous use cases which could not use intelligence are now getting like applied, like how Wispr Flow happened.
Yeah.
Or like another favorite example for me is the Suno.ai. If you've not used Suno.ai, you should use it, because like it will in 2 minutes, the Maggie promise, it will turn you into A.R. Rahman.
Wow.
Well, I'm joking, but like you just go to ChatGPT, then go to Suno, and then like come up with some ideas and saying generate lyrics, put it onto Suno, and then it will create a music which will sound fantastic.
Wow.
The thing like this was not imaginable before.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm trying to say is that every 6 months there is like a model unlock that is happening. Scaling law is helping make these unlock, which means that as leaders or as anybody, you can only look at the roadmap for 6 months. And after that, you should have short-term memory. And why I say short-term memory is 6 months ago, if it didn't work, normally what we do is we carry that experience and scar, saying, oh, I tried building a coding agent, I tried building a voice agent, it did not work.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to try that again. But those people who don't have that scar and are able to forget that,
Right.
then they're going to actually come back and then try again. Right? So the way I am actually making sense of this in terms of saying, has it changed for you is like 6 months ago, I tried something, it did not work. Okay, it did not work at that time.
Yeah.
But like 6 months later, I'm going to go ahead and try. So which is why I'm not writing off on tools. Like, if I go and play with a tool, let's say that there is a tool that allows you to do sales, I'm like, sure, like it did not work 6 months ago, I'm going to try it again. And Wispr Flow, right? For me, it was like one such experience. Like 18 months ago, I was not impressed. But I'm very impressed now.
Yeah. And you have another customer.
Another convert, right? So you have 2 converts, right? So, so I would say that, like you should have that short-term memory loss.
Wow. So that actually sounds amazing. And it can also sound scary, right? At the same time. And I want to bring, back the topic around leadership, right? Today we want to talk also about the leadership shifts, right, that are necessary in the age of AI. And, when I look at it, in a traditional kind of a leadership definition, leaders were supposed to have all the answers, right? Now, AI has all the answers for you. How do you look at the role of leaders in this new era where knowledge is available, information is available, even application of that particular knowledge and information is also available? What is the role of leaders now with this context of AI being part of everyone's life?
No, I would say that, look, from an answer leader, like when you said, every leaders were supposed to have answers, most people were supposed to have answers, but now AI has those answers. For me, leader was all not about answers. Leader was about giving directions, right? Saying lead in this direction. Right. And if we lead in this direction, we will win the vision that we are going after, right? So that looks like it has gotten commodified, right? So the way I would say is that at least like, before AI, there is this famous VC, Ben Horowitz, he used to say that, there are peacetime CEOs and there are wartime CEOs. Peacetime CEOs are people who are going through like, an environment where by and large things are stable, right. And then, winners are established, right? A lot of disruption is happening, and how do you actually lead these organizations? And that required a different set of style. Then he would also talk about wartime CEOs, saying that there are big changes that are happening, and that how do you actually navigate those environmental changes and then give people a direction. So if you're in peacetime, you're not going to say, okay, go and like, fight this war or fight that war. Like you're going to say, hey, let's run some drill and make sure that, we are ready for, there is like a threat. I think, with AI, it is not only like a big platform shift, which is creating a wartime zone, but one of the things that I feel that is different from the regular wartime CEO is that you need to be like a builder CEO, right? You have to be hands-on, and only when you are hands-on, then you have a sense of what is the direction to give. That is what I think is changing in the AI shift. Is saying that, okay, you are going through a lot of changes every 6 months, everything is changing, but you will make a sense of that only when you're hands-on.
And I want to extend that further, right? When I look at it from not just a leader perspective, but anyone, right, in this particular, especially who are, starting their career or in their mid to senior level career, there's a kind of a dilemma that they have, right? Should I, use AI, and that may look stupid, right? If I'll make mistakes, right? Or should I just worry about it and then do nothing. Which part resonates more with you? Like which particular team would you be part of or endorse in that particular scheme of things? Like, worried about it and because I look maybe stupid, or I know I may look stupid, but I might as well use it to kind of, understand it.
Yeah, I think there are different segments of folks, right? So I would end up working with a lot of founders, and we're always dealing with a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe in a large company context, it is about dealing with a lot of complexity. But then what has happened is that even in a large company context, we are ending up dealing with a lot of uncertainty.
Right.
And my partner, he actually has like one very simple rule. He's like, if you want to make sense of world as they are changing, the only thing that you need to do is stir. Right. Penicillin was invented because the scientist was stirring. Right. And then you figured out something really worked.
Yeah.
So I would more towards the option of saying, okay, you got to do something and you are going to sort of try something, and it may work, it may not work, but you will actually eventually learn. That's the best response to dealing with uncertainty. If it is complexity, then that here are the different blocks and things that are there, and then you will figure out a way to say, hey, how do I put structures and programs and things like that. But when you deal with uncertainty, it is you are better off by keeping on stirring. So that's what my partner always says, that okay, you're like working in a startup environment where you're dealing with so much of uncertainty. You keep on stirring, and then you will get to a place where accidents will happen, and that accident will actually give you the learning, and that's how discoveries happen.
Right.
So that's what I would say.
So let me bring it back to you, right? How has your leadership approach evolved, given that you are actually, I would say someone who is like at the epicenter of how technology can be leveraged to really change lives, right? So you've been in that for, I would say, multiple decades. What was your leadership philosophy when you started, right? Like, hey, I want to be a leader like this. And then given what is happening and given what you just said, right, like you want to not risk doing something because of fear of failure. How has your leadership approach evolved during that particular journey? Was there any kind of breakdowns or something that happened, and then how did you navigate that?
It may sound like we're doing like a plug for Intuit, but the best organizational skills, best leadership skills are all something that I learned from Intuit. For me, there are two great leaders that I always look up to in terms of, I would say, two or three leaders. For amongst them, one is definitely Bill Campbell.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
So
and
true.
We had the fortune of spending some time when we were at Intuit, distant or close.
Yeah.
Right. And he would say this, right? Your title makes you a manager and your people make you the leader.
Absolutely.
Right. So that is something that is etched in my heart. I carry that forever. And I don't think, that part has changed. Right. So leadership is about okay, you're saying that, look, I come and work in a group. And if I'm able to take the group together in a place, it just does not benefit me, but benefits all the people together in terms of the goals that they want to reach. Right. So how do you actually set a vision, and how do you translate it in a way that they can understand that their own personal vision will be achieved? In my mind, this is the simplest definition of leadership. In age of AI, before AI, it is all about people. I mean, something learned it into it, right? So that part has not changed at all.
Yeah.
The other part about leadership could be about strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? About how you actually approach this. In fact, when I'm working with founders, coaching CEOs, I talk about there are only three jobs of a CEO. Set the vision, paint the vision, set the strategy, get the fuel, and the people to actually give them the fuel, the resources, and then say, okay, go win. That's the role of a CEO. That's the role of a leader. Right? You're working in a small team or you're working in a large team. So that doesn't change in the age of AI. You have to actually paint a compelling vision. And then you need to give clarity on saying, are we going to take left or are we going to take right? If there is uncertainty, there is complexity, how are you going to deal with this? And then I give you the resources to be able to do that. Yeah. And the job of a leader is to actually constantly revise that. Especially when, I talked about saying in AI, when, your terrain is changing every 6 months, then, there is confusion. You have to come back and then say, okay, this is where we are headed, right?
Totally.
This is what our strategy is, right? And this is how things have changed, and these are the resources that we need. And then you have to actually think about building the team as like putting together a sports team.
Yeah.
And make everybody realize that, as a sports team, how do they play with each other? And if the game has changed from cricket to baseball, you have to turn from Dhoni to a baseball star player and then say, hey, this is how we're going to match.
And do you even understand that the game has changed?
Do you even understand that the game has changed? So that is the job of the leader, to actually translate the vision and the strategy, and then, get the team together. And Anshuman doesn't change.
Yeah. But irrespective, Rajan, there is a lot of fear out there, right? And I'm sure, everyone who is viewing this is kind of facing this on a daily basis, right? Fear of maybe my job will not be there. Maybe I'll become irrelevant. Something new will come. Every time we kind of like, you open the newspaper or you read through whatever web, etc. Every day there's something new coming, right? And that's not going to change. I think it's going to probably accelerate. Then how do you adjust to this new way of living your life every day, right? Like, do you live in this fear, or do you embrace this as a way of living your life, etc.? How do you look at it?
So I was meeting my mentor yesterday, and he said something very beautiful. He said, we were talking about all the changes, and he said, today the countries are confused, the CEOs are confused. What we need is that we need to actually reduce our identity. What I mean by that is that I work with a lot of SaaS founders, right? And SaaS is now called as the new COBOL, right? And it looks terrifying, right? SaaS, which is supposed to be the future, is now become a furniture, right? SaaS, you can make great amount of money. People still make great amount of money on COBOL. $3 trillion of transaction goes through COBOL systems even today in 2026. But no millennial is going to work on this. No Gen Z is going to work on this. No Gen Alpha is going to work on this, because it is not future anymore. Right? So the issue that I see when I work with founders is that they just are still tagging themselves as a SaaS founder. If you actually say, drop the word SaaS founder and then say founder, then the question is more about not looking at SaaS playbooks, but saying, how do I problem solve? How do I create value? And if I take that question further and have conversation with people saying, oh, I was a programmer, and programmer meant turning English into Java. Right? But now that can be done by Cloud Code really, really easy. It can generate 10,000 lines of code in one day.
Totally.
But what doesn't change is okay, how do you actually do problem solving? That doesn't change. So if we are willing to not get anchored to the identities of the past that we have cultivated for 10, 12, 15, 30 years, and then say, hey, this is a time of great change. What do I need to actually shift to? Right? And that cannot happen if we are anchored to our older identities.
Yeah.
Right? If I call myself as a founder, if I call myself as an investor, and I don't have hands-on experience on the change that has happened, I won't get a sense of what is the change that I need to do.
Yeah. Very true.
So for me, the conversation that I have is something that Paul Graham has said, keep your ego low, keep your identity low. And as long as we are able to do that, right, then we will say, okay, now that I'm not anchoring myself into this particular role, title that I have become expert for in the last 15, 30 years, then you'll be like, okay, what do I do differently now?
And I mean, it's very natural that, over the years, whether you are a leader or, someone who's, created their own image and identity, you want to really carry that everywhere. We actually work so hard to keep that identity, keep that image up all the time. And that could also become like a limiting belief, right? That, hey, as a leader, I need to know all the answers. I need to be better than everyone else. It may not be the new reality, right? And so how do you let go of that self-belief that you have created for yourself and be open to new way of looking at leading, right? And that's where I think that there is this resistance that happens. You're like in this maintenance cycle, suddenly something new comes up and then you feel like I need to take new action, but then your identity comes in the way of like, okay, but I am a leader, let me just delegate it. Let me not be hands-on with AI. Let me just supervise how things are being done within the company. how do you
So I would
talk
say that,
about
look, if Shantanu has to become a beginner, we all can become a beginner. So that should make you feel empowered and relieved. That is the first step that I actually share with folks, saying, look, you don't have to fear.
Yeah.
Right? But then the thing about emotion is that, no amount of conversation about, like, describing the emotion actually makes the change. So, like, my reframe to everybody is that, look, it is not a problem with you. It is the world outside that has shifted.
Yeah.
So don't take it hard on yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? As long as you're willing to play. I think this is right now, doesn't matter whether you're 20-year-old, whether you're 60-year-old, it's time for you to play with new tools.
Yeah.
Like how you're playing with Wispr Flow.
Totally.
You play with those tools, and then you will realize, okay, maybe this I can do better. I use these tools to actually do that judgment better.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's why I tell people that, don't worry. Like, everybody is going through the change. Absolutely. It is not just you are as a leader is getting questioned. You as a programmer that is getting questioned. It's not that you as a designer is getting questioned. Everybody is going through this change. We're all in this together. The way to actually navigate with this is, the way to deal with fear is not by being under pressure, saying, hey, I need to go find a new image. I would say play. Play with things. Right? And figure out, like, okay, with this, what is going to emerge. So we have, I think, practically everybody in the world is given playtime with AI tools.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so true, right? I mean, today you can do phenomenal stuff that perhaps you could not even imagine doing with any tool. You can take any of these AI tool and create an agent, or you can actually build like a whole game. You can, do something, a task that probably would have taken you for like maybe 10 weeks or something. You can probably do it in like, fraction of seconds or something. So I think it's the best time to play, as you put it. And I want to like talk about also this, how this AI now seems to become like so concentrated with power. There's so much of power now with AI. And then, as you look at it from here, and it kind of continuously evolves. And I would like you to talk about the evolution of AI the way you actually were talking to us earlier. Do you think this is going to create big shifts in the way countries are going to become different, and probably how things will change in the world economies, given someone will kind of suddenly have so much of power that everyone is like, oh my god, how do I deal with this now?
Generally, I've believed in the world things work through power laws. Right? The top 3%, right, in terms of wealth, in terms of like power, in terms of many things that we talk about in world, like, grab the rest of the 97%. Right? And this is like a nature's law, right? Yeah. So whether it is startups, whether it is big tech companies, you will always see that the top 3% actually grab the 97%, right? My guess is that with AI, we are going to see even more concentration, right? And which is a little hard to deal with, right? From a country's perspective, I don't know who will be winner, but like, anyone who's actually going to ensure that they are the winner in the AGI, ASI, and the super intelligence ladder, they will actually dictate how the rest of the world is going to sort of behave. If you really look at, like, last couple of decades, it was all about, like, countries that had access and like, ability to modulate how oil gets distributed. They are the ones that who had that power. Now, whoever is going to be able to have better data centers, have, like, run better intelligence per unit dollar per joule, they are actually going to be the center of power. And I guess, like, there are a couple of countries who are in the race for that. I mean, there is US, and then there is China. And China, I feel, is slightly ahead of US in the way they are competing in the market. And then there is India, and then there are, like, other Middle East companies. The Middle East companies are saying that, look, we were really big in oil. Now we have to actually invest in AI. So they are, like, doing a lot of investments in AI. But like, my own take is China may be slightly ahead of the rest, because they got their hardware, their semiconductors, they are releasing out open source models. I feel that they are playing this plywood strategy and flooding the market with like really really cheap models, and rest of the world may end up using those models. And they're also innovating on top of the application layer, and they are someone historically who is regulated to actually win. So they don't allow foreign companies and foreign technologies to come and win inside the China market. And inside China, they develop their own local applications, everything, and then they start exporting it, right? And I feel that, compared to the internet, for AI, they are doing it like 10 times faster. So from a country perspective, China may be much ahead, right? Even though from an investment perspective, US is doing most amount of investment into all these like fundamental technologies, and India may become like a use case capital, right? It may actually pick some things from like US, or pick some things from China, and maybe do a little bit amount of like sovereign work inside, but then like billion people scale use cases will actually get renditioned in India.
Nice. Wow. Wow. So it brings us to the question around leadership. And what do you think leaders need to do in the next 6 months to really get ahead of where they are and be at the cutting edge of how they leverage AI and how they deal with AI in the larger scheme of things?
Great question, Anshuman. So what I would say is that I look for references. I look for examples, right? So I would say the Shopify CEO is like a great example. If you see, like we talked about, like builder CEO. So the Shopify CEO is running $100 billion company, but then he's burning his midnight oil, right? Experiencing all the coding tools that are there, and then like figuring out like hands-on and what are the changes that are happening. Now you might argue that Shopify CEO was like a CTO type of person who had like a technical background, but then you look at Yamini Rangan, right? She doesn't have a technical background, but she was able to pivot the entire organization within 60 days on saying that, look, everybody needs to invest into AI, everybody needs to work on these tools, and then they figured out. I mean, HubSpot went through this big, massive dent, right? All the SaaS companies, they all work because of inbound marketing, and HubSpot was the company that actually championed inbound marketing. They saw 30-40% dip in their inbound traffic. What did they do? They invested in agent engine optimization, or like ChatGPT engine optimization, and they went ahead and acquired a company, and then now that is part of their offering. So you need to recognize this change. You have to be hands-on, and you need to really move fast. So I mean, in terms of tactical things, I would say is don't have more than 6 months roadmap. Be hands-on, right? And being hands-on means that you could use Wispr Flow, right, and understand that things have changed. Right. And only when you use these tools, when you use Midjourney, when you use ChatGPT, when you use Notebook LM, when you use like things like Suno, and then you will know that these tools are like like magic wands. And when these tools are like magic wands, then you will understand like what is the delta it is creating in terms of business models. I would say that we're still very early in this whole AI journey, and I'm not very worried about people having to move to, let's say, an outcome-based business model, which is what AI promises. You can still work on your old pricing models, but then you need to invest in new product experiences. In fact, for every company that is actually thinking about SaaS to AI, I actually run them through a couple of questions, right? I'm like, look, if you're going from SaaS to AI, the first question to ask is your traffic source pattern changed? Right? If your traffic source pattern has completely changed, then you need to do something about it, which means that you need to relook at your GTM. The second question that I say is that, has there been like a product experience in your category?
Yeah.
Not done by you, but done by somebody else, like Claude Cowork or like, ChatGPT, that has actually blown the minds of your customers. If they are going to go look at that particular experience, they're going to come and say that, oh, I was using here, why I'm not having this experience here? Right. So that resets the experience for the customer. If it resets the experience, it changes the buying pattern. If it changes the buying pattern, then it affects your business. So the second question to ask is like, has the customer experience changed? And you will only know when you are being hands-on about this.
Right.
And the third question to ask is, do you have like a competition who is changed his pricing model, or he's like radically changed his product experience? You cannot sit still. You'll have to respond to that. Right? Then the third or the fourth question is what people don't like, that I like to talk about. So the thing is that, look, when change happens, and especially change like this is happening, what will happen is that you'll have broadly three types of people. One, I would say that they are going to oppose the change. So I would say that a lot of people are going to oppose the change, saying, look, we've seen false promises of AI and this is not going to deliver. And usually it is people who have like about 10 to 15 years of experience who have not seen multiple platform shit. They're going to come and oppose this. Oh, like, AI cannot write this code, right? We used to actually run this architecture and like, it can never be good. And let me tell you, like people like Linus Torvalds and DHH, who's the inventor of Ruby on Rails, in October 2025, they were actually voicing against AI. December 2025, after Opus 4.5 had come, they completely changed their mind, and then they said, AI can actually now write code. And I would say kudos to them because they were hands-on and they were willing to actually change the mind. And like for someone like Linus Torvalds to change mind like this it's almost like next to impossible because it's very, very opinionated. But you have to be hands-on to actually know that these shifts are happening. Now, if your people are not willing to make the change, then you need to put them into bucket of saying that these are AI frictional creating people. Then there are some people who will make the change with AI, but they will need some assistance.
Right.
So you need to give them training. And then there will be some people who will actually tell you how to use these AI tools. So you will have to actually follow them. And that change is coming to us at a phase and a pace. This is unprecedented in the sense that, we're all drinking from fire hose.
Yeah.
We are like facing dam breaking moments.
Yeah.
Right. So you need to actually be agile, nimble, like, be willing to sort of drop all your old mental models, be willing to sort of learn through like first person experience, and then say, okay, now I get it. Now let me take charge and lead my team.
Yeah.
Right. And leadership, the part that I would say doesn't change is that the job of a leader is to take the unpopular decision, have the courage for the larger good.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Take the most unpopular decision and then say, okay, like, look, guys, we need to do this. This is a tough one, but take everybody along. Right. But like, take that change.
Yeah. But some things don't change, right, as a role of a leader. And I want to bring the purpose of a meeting conversation here, which we were having earlier. And I want you to unpack that in terms of, a lot of people actually talk about, when you think of it in the larger scheme of things as, leaders, how do you really take care of people? I think that's not changed, right? And in that context, do you want to share the purpose of meeting?
Yeah, purpose of meeting. So the broader leader part. So I heard this from Scott. I've had this opportunity to learn from John Chambers as well. Is it like, both of them, I've heard them say that the job of a leader to actually bring energy.
Yeah.
To actually inspire, show a vision. But then, like, when we are meeting, the only thing that you're you are able to transfer them, especially if it becomes like a large organization, this is the energy that you bring into the room. And I've had this good fortune of being coached in, like, in a leadership conversation where, like, Scott Cook, the founder of Intuit, he asked this, like, great question saying, what do you think is the job purpose of a meeting or the job of a meeting? A lot of us would say, oh, the job of a meeting is to collect, gather information, like, give everybody a to-do, make sure that, it starts on time, ends on time, and then, run it well, etc., etc. The answer that I was shocked by, he said, before meeting, after meeting, the team that is there, if you have not created a positive delta of energy,
right,
then, you do not do a good job of a meeting.
Absolutely.
The job of a meeting is to create a delta of that energy, right, for the team, that they are feeling motivated. Then, like, they will figure out the action item and they will know what to do beyond the action item as well. But if you are going to be very mechanical, then that is like what Bill Campbell would say, right? That is, you've been a manager. You are not a leader.
Absolutely.
Right? And a leader should know how to run a meeting. Another great thing that Bill Campbell used to say, that, you need to know how to run a staff meeting. Right? And in running that staff meeting, you need to have this energy delta that you need to bring.
Yeah. The energy and inspiration part doesn't go away.
It doesn't
from
go away.
Like who you really become as a leader, right? And with that, I want to bring us to a close. We can chat for another like hours together, and we'll continue to do that. But Rajan, thank you so much for really unpacking this particular theme of leadership shifts in the age of AI. You have talked about several examples where you're seeing it happen on a day-to-day basis. You have had your own understanding of how these shifts impact someone, from a leader perspective, how it has impacted companies, and how it can actually shape how you can really create a bigger impact for yourself and for companies and countries together. So I really, really appreciate you from bringing all that insight to this conversation. And I'm 100% sure that our viewers are going to maybe ask for one more episode with you. So I'll reach out to you on that note.
Anshuman, always a pleasure talking to you. I know we always have a great time whenever we are hanging out. So I enjoyed this very much.
Yeah, and I remember, bunking some time and going out for a movie together.
Were we supposed to talk about that in the podcast?
We have talked enough already, so I think we are fine. But I feel so, happy that we still have this friendship, going, and that's very, very critical. And in my own journey of, working with leaders, how you connect with people. And one of my favorite quote, maybe that's how I want to probably end this one, is from Maya Angelou, where she actually talks about people forget what you said, people forget what you did, but they will never forget how you make them feel. And I think that is what true leadership is all about, is how do you really make people feel energized, inspired, irrespective of what is happening in and around you. Of course, you need to reimagine, you need to reinvent, but that central theme of really making sure that people connect with what you're doing and people feel the positive impact that you're trying to bring. And it could be you're taking some really bold decisions, right, for the larger good, as you said, but the intent, the come from is from the right place.
Absolutely.
So with that, thank you again, Rajan, and look forward to continuing the conversation. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Please share your feedback, comments, and give us more ideas on things that you would like to hear more about. Take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.